not practicing cybersecurity essentially means you're giving the keys of your digital house to somebody who can do many things inside the house. So it's like giving invitation to cyber criminals to have a party at your expense at your house. So let's boot up, log in, and hopefully not get logged out as we decrypt the mysteries of the cybersecurity. And remember, the one thing easier than hacking is forgetting your password. So let's get into the real world of cybersecurity and see what, as a part of the ERM, can we do about this whole aspect. So what I'm planning to cover today is about an introduction to cybersecurity, role of data in business, why this is becoming increasingly important for the business, and how does data pose opportunities as well as risk for the organization, a landscape in terms of data risk, and then we will talk about one cybersecurity instance and go through the details in terms of what it was about and what did they do and what were the implications of it, so that it gives us a sense of holistic picture in terms of the whole this thing. Then, as a part of the ERM, what is it that we can do in terms of risk assessment, identifying, assessment, and qualification and mitigation of those risks? And the key aspect as MBA students and future leaders is how do I budget for this? And what is the ROI? This the very typical question that most of us in MBA should be asking is the ROI question in terms of investment in cybersecurity as well. And how do we integrate this whole ERM and cybersecurity as a part of the overall organizational need? And also, how do we make it more board-centric and bring us up as a part of the overall risk management framework of the enterprise? And we will also quickly talk about some of the regulatory requirements that are there across the world in terms of data privacy and what we need to be doing. A quick recap, and then we'll open the floor for questions. So, okay, let's get straight away into the subject. So I'll just read out the the definition, which is a pretty important one. Otherwise, I will be deviating from the slides in terms of this thing. So cybersecurity involves protecting the computer systems, networks, and programs from digital attacks. This is a basic layman explanation of what is the cybersecurity. Why do people do the security or the attacks? Is aimed at assessing, altering, or destroying some sensitive information, or using that to extort money and disrupting a competitor's business or a business so that they are able to extract or get into the ransom business. So why cybersecurity matters? Again, very critical in terms of protecting sensitive data. As more and more businesses rely on data, and with everything now being digital, and there is hardly any business that is non-digital now, the data around a customer becomes critical for all the businesses in terms of how they need to store it and make sure that that is available for them only to be able to have access to and rely on it. And of course, the next thing is very critical is customer trust, because once there is a data breach, a lot of people become very averse to dealing with that company, and a significant amount of trust is lost. We will try and talk about in terms of quantification, in terms of what happens when and all that as well, so that you get a sense of what we are not talking something in the air, but this is some real numbers and impact in terms of data and financials that people have been able to measure in terms of what a cybersecurity risk poses to an organization. Continuing on that aspect of it, again, the economic impact. Like I mentioned, there is a significant financial losses from theft or ransom payments or even indirect costs associated with disrupting your operations or loss of business that can happen in terms of the whole cybersecurity risk. And business continuity, of course, becomes a big challenge as more and more businesses get integrated into the cyber world. Having a digital presence and having a face of the company on the net is crucial to kind of making sure that your business is conducted in a normal and in a more helpful manner. So if you look at it, while what has changed in the last 5 or 10 years in terms of the whole digital space is that more and more push is being asked for from the companies in terms of one, ease of use, how reliable you are as a company. And people do not want to interact this thing, but they want more personalization in terms of how you want to proceed with an interaction with the company. And of course, convenience of doing business anytime, anywhere, any place. And of course, last but not the least, in terms of the customer support and other things that people require and be able to interact with the systems directly and be able to conduct a business rather than going through a whole horde of process in terms of doing anything. So be it from groceries to buying vegetables or ordering your milk or buying an electronic item, most of the things have now moved online. And there is increasing reliance now on a digital front for all the companies. And that becomes a very critical aspect of the future for any company to survive. So if you kind of look at the breaches that have happened even in the year 2024 as we speak, as we look at some of the technology improvements that have happened, we had the Microsoft Azure data breach. What happened was that the accounts of hundreds of senior executives were compromised in terms of data being available. The attackers used phishing and cloud account takeovers. And even a company like Microsoft had challenges with respect to insufficient protection against phishing attacks and cloud security vulnerabilities. Another significant big attack that happened as well was Bank of America data breach.
Murli, you need to move your screen. It's still in the second slide. Yeah, okay.
So this is again something that happened through a third-party system in terms of attack through Infosys, their system, where they attacked through the third-party vulnerabilities, and a lot of social security and other data got exposed. So from this, we can see that increasingly this is kind of becoming a very important aspect in terms of how businesses do their work and how the cybersecurity thefts are also enhancing in terms of the systems they use and how they are able to take advantage of even smallest of the breaches that they are able to identify in the system and be able to exploit that very effectively. So the role of business in the decision making, it's very critical because data analytics now power many of the companies in terms of how the insights are used and how they use that for development of products and also provide the right amount of services to the customers. Of course, the data and the customer interface enables the companies to operate more efficiently and be able to do a lot of predictive maintenance in terms of manufacturing and reducing the downtime. This was a very big focus for us in Honeywell in terms of how we could provide that kind of enablement to the process solution industries and to the big buildings. In fact, in terms of how predictable we can make their performance. So assume that you are working as a part of the refineries. So the whole industry value chain is a very critical aspect of it. And the controllers from Honeywell controls the whole functioning of the refinery. And so if you are able to predict and prevent any downtime of the refinery, it adds to a significant value, and people are willing to pay extra money for that kind of an ability. And so that we are able to do by doing a lot of data analysis and understanding the systems and working with them over a period of time. Like I mentioned, the consumer insights are the key things now in terms of how a customer behaves, what does he want, and what is he thinking of in the future, so that we are able to personalize, sell, and market to the customer based on his needs. And this data provides a very big competitive advantage, effectively over competitors. And this is increasingly becoming the need or the drive for most of the companies. Like typically what people say is data is the new oil. So what oil was to the economy in the 70s, data is now the same kind of a provider of inputs which drives the businesses today. So if you take examples of Netflix, which is very customers driven and which uses a lot of data analytics, you can see them analyzing what patterns or what kind of shows you are watching. Are you watching the shows one time, or are you continuously watching? What kind of serials interest you, based on which they whole chatter or cater to your requirement in terms of what serials they should produce and how they should be showing it to you. In terms, if you just look at their ability to show you in terms of what are the options that are there, those are again learned from the experience of your interacting with their system in terms of what serials do you watch or what movies do you watch, based on which you get a recommendation. Same is the case with Amazon or any other company, Swiggy for that matter, or Zomato, where increasingly data analytics becomes a key aspect in terms of understanding the customer behavior and providing them what is required in terms of the services or the product. So data is increasingly becoming a very important aspect of the business, and protecting this data essentially becomes a very key aspect of cybersecurity and why this is there.
So Murali, just to add to what Murali just mentioned, in a company like Honeywell, or for that matter, a big bank or a multinational company like Honeywell, the number of points from where we are accessing the customer and supplier data is not 1 or 2 or 3, it is hundreds and thousands of points from where we access and we control. Not only the customer sites, sometimes we are maintaining airports, we are maintaining buildings, sensitive buildings, military establishments, big factories, or let's say a smart city. I mean, number of different projects are going on. So if you understand the importance of what Murali is trying to say here, data is the key and oil for the business now, but it is not just from 1 or 2 points. So from around the Honeywell world, we are accessing customer sites, and customers will also be able to access through our system. So you can understand now the importance of a thing like cybersecurity, because any one breach and the whole reputation will be lost for Honeywell, and we will not only lose projects, but also the reputation and respect. That's as important as it is now. Somebody is speaking in the background. Can you please go on mute? We hear some talks going around. Yeah. Please go on mute. Okay, Murli, go ahead.
So like I mentioned, with great power comes a lot of responsibility and a greater risk in terms of your systems are being tested for the cyber security attacks. And data breaches can expose sensitive information, leading to financial loss, legal consequences, and damaged reputation. So that becomes a very critical thing. And also now, a lot of regulations are coming up in terms of GDPR, CCPA, India Information Act, and other things in terms of how data needs to be managed.
Sorry, am I audible now?
Yeah. Yes, Murli, we can hear you. Yes, Murli, we can hear you. Can you hear us now?
Yes, sir.
Murli, you can go ahead. We can hear you. Murli?
If somebody can let me into the meeting.
You're there, Murli. I think we can hear you.
We can hear you and see you also.
Murli, you're on mute now. I can see you talking, but you're on mute.
Okay.
Murli, you're on mute.
Yeah. Now we can see you. Now I can hear you.
Now with a lot of data that is being stored, personal data that is being stored across the systems, most of the governments are now getting into the act in terms of making sure that there are compliance around the data, and any loss or breach of data is viewed pretty seriously by the governments. So a lot of regulations are coming up. The European Union has come up with a GDPR. The US has a CCPA and HIPAA related acts. And India is also coming up with an IT Act that kind of ensures that the data that is being shared and stored is used for the right purposes. So this is quickly about this thing. And recently, we can see that the incidences of the cyber security related challenges or data breaches have gone up very significantly. And 45% of the Americans have had their personal information compromised by a data breach in the last 5 years. Since more of cloud involvement is there, the 82% of the data breaches are now coming in the cloud area.
Murli, you need to change the slide.
No, this is not there in the slide, but I'm just giving some points in terms of what kind of impact or quantity that we are talking about. And wherever 52% of the data breaches that had involved some kind of personal identifiable information, and that has gone up compared to the earlier 2022. There are a lot of credential-based attacks in terms of breaches involving stolen credentials, which can be used for some of the cyber crimes and other things. So the experts predict that there is going to be a loss of cost, the whole thing around the cybersecurity cost that is going to be there, which is going to go up significantly in terms of the whole thing. So if you look at it in terms of the whole, in terms of the whole breaches that have happened, we look at hacking, which is a very significant one that has happened. And in terms of that's basically unauthorized access of data through exposing or looking at the vulnerabilities in the system. Phishing, this is like introducing a mail, or now a lot of AI is also being used, where they trick an individual in terms of revealing their password or social identity. Ransomware, this is also encrypted malware that uses the system and infects the system, and then slowly gets into your system and then looks at the data and tries to create a disruption in your system. And of course, insider threats, this is basically your employees or your third-party vendors or contract employees going rogue. Though this can be malicious or accidental, but still data breaches are a very significant one. And this is a big threat, because if somebody turns malicious, he knows exactly what kind of a data that is. And so he is able to get access to the right set of data that can create problem for the company. The other type of attack is an SQL injection, wherein they insert a code into the SQL or through a web page, which kind of acts into your database and starts eating up the data or exposing the data in the third-party websites. The recent ones that are more happening is a distributed denial of service, where you just overwhelm the systems by throwing so many requests and challenges at that system that the system is not able to handle. So if you are able to handle, say, 10,000 transactions in a month or in a day or a minute, I expose that to a lakh of transactions or 10 lakhs of transactions by using a software so that your systems get overwhelmed and they just fail to act. So some of the famous cases that we have had in terms of hack was on the Sony Pictures Entertainment This happened in 2014, where Sony was supposed to release a film called The Interview, which had featured the plot to assassinate a North Korean president. And the whole North Korean hackers got into the Sony systems and exposed a large amount of confidential data, including some personal information about employees' emails and other stuff, so that they would try to kind of prevent that movie from being released. Then there was an attack on the RSA, which is a part of the EMC, where they issued security tokens for the companies to interact. Using a phishing mail, they had sent some files, Excel files, along with attachment to the email, which opened up their systems in terms of compromising, and a lot of data with respect to the tokens were lost. And the company had to reissue tokens and cancel out all the earlier tokens that were issued, which resulted in a huge amount of loss for EMC. And the other famous attack was that WannaCry attack, which was kind of a worm that was infected into the systems, and ransom was demanded for them to kind of withdraw those ransomwares. Now, this ransomware has become such a rampant one that in the dark web, there are sites that offer ransomware as a service. Like you have software as a service. They have converted this into a business model itself, where if you don't have the expertise to create a ransomware, you can go buy a ransomware, and based on different revenue sharing models, you can really create a ransomware attack. So this is kind of becoming a very digitalized illegal service that is being offered now. And of course, the attack on Google in 2020, where their services were disrupted, their cloud services were disrupted for a brief period of time, was using the DDoS attack, where they overwhelmed even Google with such complicated requests and tasks that their servers and cloud had to go down for some time. So that is the kind of enablement and the power that we are talking about in terms of the cybersecurity and what people wield in terms of this whole aspect. So that kind of makes it very critical for the organizations to be always ahead in terms of their data and their systems protection. And it imposes a lot of strain on the organizations to keep themselves updated. Because even if you are a step back, that is enough for the attackers to move into your system and create havoc. So just as a cyber security incident now occurs every 39 seconds, affecting at least one of the 3 people in the world. So it's kind of moving in that speed, and that's where the cybersecurity becomes all the more critical from an organizational ERM perspective, where they need to really look at it and be able to protect their data systems. So some of the financial statistics with respect to why and what is the kind of money that we are talking about. So the cybersecurity ventures, a global cybersecurity consulting firm, estimates that close to $10.5 trillion will be what annually by 2025 that people would lose from the cybersecurity thing, from currently around 3 million, that $3 trillion is what they are losing. This sharp rise is happening because of the cyber criminals who have significantly improved their methods, and now with the added AI, this becomes a very critical area for the companies to be ahead on. And like I mentioned, reputational damage is very high, and especially for companies that are very critical, and in terms of areas that they operate in are very sensitive, where they cannot have a second choice. It becomes very critical for them to have those maintained at the highest standards. Like the example that I gave, that Ravi also gave, like refinery, where Honeywell is protecting or doing the refinery control systems. It just is not possible for us to have even a 5 seconds, forget about 5 minutes, 5 seconds of downtime, because that impacts the whole refinery big time, and the money that is being lost is very huge. Unlike a software company where there is an attack and the systems go down, probably 10 minutes you are not operational, but you come back, you can still salvage. But some of the industries, it becomes very critical in terms of your protection, where you cannot afford even 5 seconds of a lapse. So, like I mentioned, the operations becomes very critical, and when now with what we talk about 5G and 6G technologies that are coming in, where a lot of Internet of Things or sensors-based things are going to be mounted on every operation, every place. Cybersecurity is a very, very critical area and a highly vulnerable one, and this is going to become a super critical one for the organizations. Just a quick case study in terms of what we took as a T-Mobile data breach that happened in 2021. Sorry. What happened was through the test environment that T-Mobile had, they were able to get into their system through the test environment, and were able to expose the personal information of about 50 million individuals. And the data, including social security, date of birth, their driving license, IDs information, and even the very critical IMEI and IMSI information that is now used extensively in terms of any crime tracking for this thing were compromised. So this put a lot of pressure on T-Mobile in terms of trying to get to clean up their act. So what was their response, and what they had to do was getting the security of the testing environment stronger, making sure that their environment security was boosted, and then the whole entry point into their live systems were disabled. And they had to respond in a very drastic way in terms of notification to all the affected individuals, and what are the steps that they have taken to mitigate the breach, and what potentially this could implicate for the customers in terms of this exposure. And like T-Mobile had to invest really a lot of billions of dollars in terms of enhancing their whole cybersecurity operations, and bringing a lot of audit and consultancy individuals to protect their systems. So the key takeaways, they had to change their comprehensive security strategy. They had to resharpen their incident response plans, because this becomes very critical when an incident happens. How quickly do you react, and how do you go back to, and how do you make sure that your customers and your affected teams are quickly able to reach out to the customers and bring back some semblance and confidence into your organization, and what kind of measures and other post this breach do you put in place to make sure that these kind of things won't be repeated, and that kind of should give in the additional assurance to the customers so that they continue to trust you as a brand and as a company. So from pure from a pure regulation perspective, who all got involved in this whole process. So that also gives a gambit in terms of the whole compliance framework that gets triggered once there is a data breach, and the whole set of government around gets involved, and there could be a lot of fines and other implications for the organization as well. Like in this case, the Federal Communication Commission, which is the US equivalent of our DOT, Directorate of Telecommunications, got involved in terms of the whole looking at the whole data breach, and to see if they had protected their customer interests adequately, and what kind of industry norms did they follow, where did they miss, and a whole set of detailed investigation into their whole cybersecurity practice. And similarly, the FTC scrutiny in terms of the data protection for the customers, and what that resulted in, and what kind of settlements would be targeted from the companies so that if there are any issues arising out of this whole incident, the customers who suffer those losses get adequately compensated. And of course, in the US, you have state level actions that also get taken in terms of such huge data breaches that happen. So a lot of state government, state departments also get involved in terms of this investigation and further fines, and to see if there are any criminal intentions behind it, and all those things get looked at, and it becomes quite a tough thing for the company in terms of the time, effort, and this thing that is required for them to kind of spend on this whole aspect of it to make sure that they come back to shape. And of course, like I mentioned, the GDPR, which is a European regulation, also gets involved when there is a data loss or a data breach involving any of the European citizens. So they also look at and impose fines on the organization. So overall, as you can see, it is not a small thing for the organization. It's a very big thing where millions of dollars were spent, and to contain the breach, and then to put in systems in place, and then to further follow-ups in terms of addressing the regulatory concerns and making sure that their systems again came back to the level that was required, that they need to have operated on. So if you look at the risk in terms of this thing, so we talked about the whole challenges around the whole aspects of it. And then now we dive into, so what can we do? How do we identify risk? How do we kind of mitigate, and how do we look at the investments and other things that are required? So if you look at it per se, the whole identification requires at the top level, what are the assets that could be subjected to a cyber attack? So you need to look at your hardware, software, and data. Similarly, what are the threat identifications that are there, which is internal, external, and any natural disaster that could happen potentially, because that also impacts your systems and your ability to service. Then you need to look at your vulnerability identifications, whether it is technical, human, or process related, in terms of what you need to do. Then the fourth one that you need to look at is your impact analysis, in terms of what all this impacts you in terms of your financial impact, your operational impact, and your reputational impact. The fifth one is the most critical one, is a likelihood assessment. So, okay, all this we talked about in terms of what potentially could happen and what are the things. So let us really look at our company and look at what are the risks of this and what is the likelihood of this happening. So that is done basing usually through a historical data, what is happening in your industry or industry trends, and your current security environment that you're operating in. How does that match up? And then
so Murali,
the final...
Murali, I think the students can then connect with the lectures that we have had. Students, if you remember, we talked about the whole aspect of planning for the risk assessment, the workshops, the questionnaires. So in the end, it all boils down to the two important things, which is calculating the business impact of a particular risk, which could be a combined weighted combination of financial impact and reputational impact. Then in one axis, we put this. In the other axis, we put the probability of that. That's what Murali talked about, likelihood of that event happening. Based on that, the three areas of green, yellow, and red aspects of the risk is calculated, the inherent risk and the residual risk. And then this is presented to the board for finally, reporting to the public, to the stakeholders as to the sufficiency of the risk management, enterprise risk management system.
Correct, Ravi. So the next that I was talking about, the sixth one was a risk prioritization, where, like Ravi mentioned just now, you create a risk matrix wherein you plot the financial impact and the likelihood of that happening, and the impact that it could have into your systems and everything, and then create a chart, a green, yellow, or a red chart based on which you take an action. And the key thing that the organizations also need to look at is a risk tolerance in terms of what is it that I can or I want to live with. So that is also an important aspect as we evaluate the whole risk profile in terms of not trying to solve or create a solution for the world's hunger problem. What is it that you can take and bite? And given that the resources are very limited, so what kind of a risk tolerance as an organization that you are willing to live with becomes a very critical aspect in terms of this whole framework that you do. So when you are talking about a risk matrix, what you need to keep in mind is, so how do I avoid a risk by taking certain actions where the cost or other implications may or may not be there. What are the risk mitigation actions that I need to do in my systems, my process, my training? How do I transfer the risk to somebody else? Is that an option as an organization that I have, so that that responsibility becomes that of a third-party organization? And the fourth aspect, like I mentioned, is the risk tolerance or risk acceptance. So how much of risk are we willing to accept in terms of this whole process, so that we create the right kind of thing that is required for my organization? It is like what we say, I should not be creating a system or a cyber security, this thing that impairs or creates hindrances or takes up the whole of my new product development budget. Because the budget at the end of the day, the money available to the organization is not endless, and there is a finite amount of money that is always available.
So Murli, just being mindful of the time, I had booked 4 to 5.
Okay, sorry.
So students, is it okay to take another 10-15 minutes? We will wrap it up and then open it up for question and answer also. So let's say 5:10, we finish and open it for questions. Vineet, can you just check and confirm?
Yes, sir. We are.
Okay. So we will, Murli, we can go for another 7 to 10 minutes, and then we will open up for a few questions as well. Is that okay?
Yeah, fine.
Okay.
So now let's talk about money, because as we all know, even the best of the locks aren't free, and neither is good cyber security. So we can go on the shopping spree endlessly for shiny new gadgets and everything. But at the end of the day, that should make sense and also should not bust the bank in terms of the financial this thing for the company. So here are some of the methodologies that typically we would use to assess this thing. So I don't know if you are familiar with the concept called an annual loss expectancy, ALE calculation, and return on security investment, which is nothing but a modified version of ROI. So the annual loss expectancy is nothing but I have a detailed thing on the part of this thing in terms of what an ALE and how do you calculate ALE as well, in terms of how do you go about doing it. It is nothing but a single loss expectancy into annual rate of occurrence. So that is your annual loss expectancy. So this is something that you measure in terms of what is, if an individual event happens, what would be my loss, and how many times is it likely to happen during the year. So if that is 1, then say 100 is your loss that you are going to incur if, say, your main computer frame or the server is going to go down. 100 rupees is the loss that you are going to incur, and you expect that this is going to happen 1 time a year. Your ALE will be 100 into 100. So we do that for each of the risks that is there, so that we arrive at the ALE and use that in terms of assessing the whole financial impact in terms of that. So the other aspect, other than this quantitative approach, is a qualitative approach, where we use the risk matrix. We talked about it, and the sensitivity analysis to hypothetical scenarios, and based on which whether this event is likely to happen or not, and then take a call in terms of an overall framework and the risk appetite that as a company you have. So a balanced approach is always helpful in terms of the whole aspect of it, and the other key thing that we need to emphasize or look at is that this is not a one-time activity. It is a continuous activity that needs to keep happening as you continuously monitor, analyze, and reassess your systems. And just because you had a 364 days of no incident doesn't mean that the 365th day there will be nothing that will happen, because everything can go wrong on the 365th day. So that slacking should not happen in terms of the whole thing. So on a broader this thing, the cyber security should become a critical part of the overall enterprise risk management or the ERM strategy, to ensure that the organization has a high resilience in terms of its ability to bounce back in case there are attacks. So these are some of the standards that are there in terms of the whole this thing in terms of cyber security framework that you can use. Will not go much into this for want of time, but these are again something that the experts will need to do. And as MBA students focusing on ERM, it's good for us to be aware of it, but we need not be the experts on this, because there are definitely experts who can look at this and create the right kind of framework and systems for this. There is also a COBIT 5 system, which is a control objectives for information and related technologies, very similar to this, which has also standards that is there for creating a cybersecurity framework for an organization. So these are some of the methodologies that we use in terms of protecting our systems. Most of you would be aware, and you are already maybe using this in your day-to-day life, like this thing, authentication, multi-factor authentication, which we use today in almost all the transactions that we use, where we use password and OTP or a combination of such thing, so that this make sure that there is a next level of verification in terms of who is having access to the systems. Encryption, again, this is something that I'm sure all of us are aware and have been using it in some form or the other, where we encrypt the data so that we don't expose our systems in the open net. The key aspect, again, is in terms of the regular security training for employees. This is a very critical thing, because most of the breaches occur because of some lack of understanding or some slackness in terms of what the employees expose themselves to in terms of the security. So one of the key things that people, though it is a pretty boring and a mundane aspect of it. Audit logging on the IT systems is a very critical thing for the companies, and that not sufficient care is being given to this aspect, though it is a very, very important aspect of it, and that is one thing that when a breach occurs is what you would first thing go and look for is this to your IT systems. What is the logging activities done? Who has logged in? What changes have been affected to the system and everything. So having these logs created and stored securely for a good enough period of time is very ignored aspect, but a very critical aspect of a cyber security. So most of the fancy things that people may have, but the fundamental and the basic thing that needs to be done is somewhere that people miss out on. And this is something that I have seen extensively as one of the things that has a biggest challenge as an organization. And at the end of the day, you should have the ability to associate each activity to an individual and establish accountability. So that is another aspect on the risk prioritization that very clearly needs to be done.
So Murali, should we open it up for a few questions at this stage, or you would like to cover one or two more slides before doing that?
Just one slide I will take.
Okay.
In terms of the regulations portion, just quickly, briefly touch on it, because that becomes an important aspect for people to understand that there is a lot of regulation around this, and these now are becoming increasingly stringent and with a lot of teeth, and that can have financial implications for the company, both in terms of reputation and financial. So, like I mentioned, GDPR in the Europe is increasingly becoming and being used extensively on companies where data breaches or adequate protection measures are not being done. HIPAA, which is a act in the US, which is protecting the health information or medical records of patients, because the health records are stored on the systems and insurance companies have access to it. So this becomes a very critical aspect of it, and the US specifically looks at this as an aspect of it. And with the regulatory thing, a lot of thing coming into India as well. The Indian law is also there in terms of compliance to the IT Act, and wherein one of the key features that India is pushing very heavily on is for the data to be stored in India, so that it is accessible to the Indian law enforcement authorities if it is required. And this, though not being enforced very rigorously now, but in the future, as India becomes the world's most or the third largest economy, a lot of cyber attacks on India will happen, and this aspect will become a very critical aspect for India as well. So I think with this, we will open up for questions. The slides you can share, and if there is something that people want to reach out specifically on any aspects of it, they can come back in terms of their this thing.
Sure. So thanks, Murali. Anyway, I will be circulating the deck to the students as well. But at this stage, we will take a few more minutes to answer specific questions on this interesting topic. So over to you, the classroom, and anybody else. You can type it out, or you can speak out your question. Yeah, you can come near the laptop or the device and speak. Sachin, you are in the room. Can you coordinate that? Amit ji, is anybody having any questions?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Sachin Thakur.
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
I have question that what are the key steps that our companies or organization taking to protect themselves from hackers? For example, black hat hackers are there which can breach the personal data of the customers or employees, which they can use for phishing or fraudulent transactions.
So thank you for that question. See, there are limited options only that are available for you to create this thing, because as a company, you want to be able to be on the net, because a lot of interaction with your customers happen in terms of the whole this thing. And you're also looking for gathering as much of data as possible about your customers and their environment. So it's a two-way street. Like, so I cannot create a moat, like if you remember the earlier Rajas. So you create on top of a mountain, you create a big castle or a fort, and then you create a moat around it by which you don't allow the enemies to come in. So similarly, it's very difficult for you to create that in the current situation, because you cannot stay on the hill forever, because you have to come down to interact with the people, gather data, and take away that data and process that data to make better sense for your business. So it is very difficult for an organization to be both open in terms of collecting data, but very this thing in terms of this thing. So that's where you see more of multi-factor authentication, firewalls, encryption being used by the companies to protect themselves against these kind of attacks. And constantly you keep hearing saying that please do not open an attachment, and the training to the employees to make sure that they understand that the phishing mail or the attachments that come with too good to be true mails sometimes carry these worms or these data breaches or viruses that potentially could impact or damage your systems. So there is a continuous education and employee engagement that needs to happen in this area. And every day that rigor has to be maintained in terms of how people approach this subject.
So, really, just to add to that, Sachin, even in a company like Honeywell, so Murli gave the example of this castle, right? And in olden days, if you see in Maharashtra and other places, a big fort, and then there is a moat around that with water filled and crocodiles, right? The idea is for the enemy not to come in. But in today's world, we exist in a place which is full of crocodiles and all these people who can come into your data. So you put firewalls, you put encryption, but still people can come in, because that's what Murli just said, right? Because you are in a world where data is being exchanged every day, every minute, right? The most important thing is you have to still be active in that world, collect the data, give your data, and do business and make money. However, with the firewall, with all this antivirus, is it 100% foolproof? No. But when something happens, how well is your system able to respond? For example, in Honeywell itself, we have seen several times, phishing mails coming in. And I know one instance where a hacker, a fraudulent guy, rogue, he sent a mail to some employee to extract several $100,000, and it was paid also. Later on, we found out that it was a fraudulent mail. So even if you have the best systems in the world, today it can happen. But when it happens, how do you stop it and control it with minimal loss? Number one. Number two, how do you train the employees as to how to react in such a situation? If one employee makes a mistake of answering a fraudulent mail, even ignorantly or deliberately, it can cause havoc for the system. So how do you train them is the most important. Very good. Anything else? Any other questions?
No, sir. Thank you.
Anybody else in the room or online? Any questions? Okay, so I'm going to also circulate this deck to all the students, and in fact, whoever else who wants. It's a very interesting deck. And Murli, we will let you, wrap up this session, and then I will let, if Munish is still available, to just say a few words to close this call. Over to you, Murli, for first wrapping this up.
So, key takeaways for me from this would be that cybersecurity is core to your business. Don't view this or put this as a IT responsibility. Please involve the leadership and the innovation in cybersecurity to happen. The leaders and the leadership team definitely must be involved in terms of understanding the overall cybersecurity and making sure that the organization is protected against this. So this would be as a part of the ERM function. I think these are two critical things that you should consider as a key takeaway from this would be that cybersecurity is a core business function. It's not some IT guy sitting in some random room create or working on a firewall or something like that. It becomes a very critical part of your organization, and increasingly every organization is becoming data driven and on the internet, and with a lot of IoT related Internet of Things bound to explode in the next 5 years, which we see effectively happening. This becomes a very core to the business. And this board and the leadership team definitely needs to get involved in cybersecurity reviews and audits, audit reviews, to make sure that it is given the same kind of importance as any financial audit would be given, so that people understand the criticality of this and make this more effective as a part of the risk management strategy of the company effectively.
Fantastic. Thanks, Murli. And what I would tell the students is that, the takeaway would be also that use the deck, try to go through the whole thing again. And as always, the learning doesn't start or end with this. It just starts. So please go through it. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to write to me. I will also get in touch with Murli to get you specific answers if required, or I will be able to, help you with further learning around this. Thank you all for joining. Munish, are you still there? Any closing comments, Munish?
He is not there. Sorry.
Okay. So thank you, students, for joining in, and thank you, Murli, for being with us. It was wonderful.
Thanks, Ravi. All the best to every student.